Uh, I think that the problem is right now Canada is treating as though it's an economic issue when it's really predicated upon like a national security issue and kind of Canada's national security failings, right? I think that if you look at kind of the indicators, Canada very much resembles a failing or collapsing state right now, right? And I think that really only remedying these national security failings is what's gonna call the tariffs off, right? I think that as much as Canada digs in its heels with regards to its own tariffs, I know that Trudeau's said that he's going to levy his own counter tariffs. I just don't think it's going to work. I think that trying to solve this issue with economic means and measures is just a misguided effort.
Well, if no deal is reached, what would the long-term effects of 25% tariffs on Canadian goods, 10%, I guess, on oil and gas, what would that mean for Canada?
Well, I mean, it would cripple an already failing economy. I mean, like under the Trudeau regime, our economy has gone to nothing pretty much. You know, he's relied on he's essentially outsourced growth and kind of and all that to foreign labor in order to plug labor gaps, right? And I think that the reality of it is Canada's already under great duress. Canadian society has been hit with a lot of failings again over the past 10 years. And I think that if the tariffs endure for really any significant amount of time, Canada could very well burst into anarchy, social chaos, this kind of stuff. I don't think it's as far off as people might want to believe or mislead themselves into believing.
Well, you know, we've got analysts here in the U.S. that say, oh, it's going to hurt American consumers. But as you mentioned, the economy is barely growing there, what, 1.5%, something like that? It seems Canadians would be hurt much worse.
Yeah, I think that until 2060 we're going to have the worst economy out of all the OECD members, right? So I don't think that we're going to end up kind of getting the long end of the stick there, you know? I think that if we engage in this kind of war of attrition, we're going to end up losing, again, because it's really just an economic symptom of a national security issue. As long as if Canada would simply fix our failings with regards to securing our border, that flow of fentanyl, and even just the flow of terrorists into America and extremist ideology, we could wrap this up pretty quickly. But instead, we've decided to mislead ourselves into believing it's an economic issue, and it simply isn't.
Well, let's talk politics here. Would the tariffs hasten or slow the political demise of Justin Trudeau and his Liberal Party?
I think he's already on the way out. I think in a way he's tried to use it as a rallying call to kind of unite Canada behind his waning government and the Liberal Party in a way to kind of detract and take away from Poilievre. He's tried to say we're all in this together when in reality it's a mess that he himself has engineered, right? For years, I think a decade pretty much, people like Doug Ford have been pleading with him to secure our borders, you know, stop the flow of fentanyl, crime, extremist ideology. And he simply hasn't done it. I don't think he's going to do it anytime soon. You know, thankfully he's supposed to be on his way out in March, but he's made a lot of promises during kind of his reign. You know, and he hasn't kept all of them. You know, I'm not necessarily confident that he's going to leave in March. You know, hopefully he does, but he should be on the way out. At least that we've got that.
Well, he doesn't seem like he's going to back down on this. He's digging in his heels, and Trump said Canada will cease to exist as a viable country without U.S. subsidies. So again, he said it should become America's 51st state. So I know most Canadians and Americans don't see that happening. Do you?
Well, I think here's the funny thing, right? If you were to ask most Canadians, I think Trudeau himself, what it means to be Canadian, what a Canadian is, he couldn't really define it outside of not being American, right? And so he doesn't really have anything to offer Canadians. In a way, the Canadian government, the Canadian state doesn't have anything to offer Canadians. And that's why Trump's proposition has become, in a weird way, viable. I don't think that such a proposition would have been viable or kind of treated as anything other than a joke under the reign of Stephen Harper, Sean Chrétien, and other Canadian politicians. But somehow, because of Trudeau's weak leadership, kind of how weak he himself has been, and how weak he has in turn rendered the Canadian state, it has really become somewhat of a viable proposition, this annexation, right? And I think it very well could become more serious if the Canadian state doesn't right its current trajectory, right? I think if things continue to degenerate and nobody comes onto the scene with something to offer Canadians in terms of this is what it means to be Canadian, I think that a 51st state doesn't sound too bad for a beleaguered people right now.
Well, it would definitely improve our hockey here, wouldn't it? I think it would. Okay, Young Voices commentator, analyst with Macdonald Laurier, Will Barclay. Thanks for being with us, Will. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.